Oh, baby, did this annoy me. First of all, what is this New York Times propaganda that the office is the best place on earth? Don't return to the office for your boss, go back for yourself?
Capitalists are trying to convince people that they want to go back to the office.
So anyway, title alone, I'm already like, what is this? And then you see who wrote it. Former exec at Goldman Sachs. Okay, so I'm like, what is the argument that she's possibly making? So first she sets the scene. Most young people do not want to go into the office. Some 2/3 of those who worked remote during the pandemic don't want to return. Let's see, a large survey in 17 countries said that 71% of 18 to 24-year-olds say, if my employer insisted on me returning to the workplace full-time, I would consider looking for another job. And then this really important point. In survey after survey, women and black workers say they prefer hybrid or remote working at higher rates than white men. And it makes sense, we know all these reasons. But then this part. Despite all this, despite the evidence that people say what they want, I want young people to return. I hope they won't underestimate the value of actually being in a room with coworkers. And then this part really annoyed me. I hope they won't give up on the office before engaging fully in trying to create a better version of it. As if going into the office and criticizing it, first of all, that we could even do that in front of our bosses like that, but B, that we aren't telling you what we want already. We're telling you what we want. We are trying to change it. And this part, I don't know. I want to know what everyone else thinks. If the social movements of the past few years have told us anything, it's that showing up and speaking up about what isn't working can bring meaningful change. Aren't we doing that? See all of the previous surveys where people are very explicitly saying that they don't want to be treated like children?
So this TikTok by Miriam Tinney is pointing out how there seems to be this large campaign both among capitalists and the press to sort of push this idea of going back to the office and painting it as though it's something that workers might want. When the actuality is, when you look at the surveys and the polls and the way people are acting, it seems very, very clear that the people who are remote working want to continue remote working. But then this brings us to the main question as to why so many capitalists are trying to push this idea of going back to the office. I mean, doesn't it cost them more money to maintain these office spaces? Doesn't it cost them more money to maintain all of the amenities and the extra staff that it takes to maintain those offices? Well, on some level, yes, but on another level, our current system of capitalism fundamentally depends on people working inside of an office space, and capitalists today don't really know how to navigate that. So let's talk about two main reasons why big businesses want people to get back to the office. Now, first and foremost, there is the reality that there are giant real estate developers that spend a ton of money building huge skyscrapers to serve as office buildings, not to mention all of the smaller office buildings around the country. And those real estate developers want to make sure that that real estate still has value as office space, because business clients can be very, very lucrative for these real estate companies. And so these big real estate companies want to bring people back to the office and push for this coming back to the office. And because finance is so deeply invested in the rest of the entire economy, a bunch of other business owners that depend on the financialization of the economy are also willing to push this pressure to get people back in the office. But then there's another layer to this, and it's something that David Graeber talks about in some of his books like BS Jobs and the Utopia of Rules. And it's this idea that under our current form of capitalism, managerialism was the solution to automation. Basically, because a lot of workers had their jobs automated away, and because the total productive labor that's actually required to maintain society is actually much less than it has been in the past, that realistically, we really only need something like a third of the current existing workforce to actually keep the economy running as it is. And that the overwhelming majority of jobs that are done are not actually jobs that need to be done because they are productive in the economy, but they are jobs that were actively created for the purpose of creating jobs. Because if automation led to waves of mass unemployment, well, the entire capitalist system would fundamentally fall apart, because there would be so many people that had their jobs automated away that they would revolt and demand some sort of either extreme reduction in working hours or some sort of universal basic income, or maybe even some sort of socialist reformation that actually fundamentally changes the nature of our economy. And because wealthy capitalists don't want that, they had to create a lot of jobs, especially middle management jobs. And the purpose of middle management under our current system really is to be the sort of ideological guiding force of capitalism, where managers are fully expected to adopt the mindset of the owners of the business, are put in a position where they're meant to scrutinize the workers below them, to antagonize any attempts to organize labor, and to fundamentally serve as the lackeys of capitalism and to vote the way capitalists want them to. And the theory is that just like under feudalism, feudal lords would fill their mansions with these aristocrats whose entire purpose was basically to protect the palace and to just be friends with the feudal lords so that there were enough people to prevent a peasant revolt, and that is basically the role of managers today, to basically just be there to support the capitalist system, which is why there are so many jobs that are entirely based off of this middle management nonsense, where they're not really producing anything, they're just policing the behavior of labor. But it becomes a lot harder to justify a lot of these middle management positions whenever people aren't working in the office because you don't have the managers in the same building as the workers, and so they can't really operate as the overseers that they normally do. And so fundamentally, the expansion of remote work really reveals the fact that a lot of these middle management positions aren't fundamentally necessary from a productivity standpoint. But that doesn't change the fact that these giant companies still want to hire these middle managers because they want to create jobs, specifically because they do not want any more leftward motion in the economy, and they especially don't want any leftward motion in the political sphere either. And so I think that's a pretty compelling reason as to why so many people in positions of power want to bring people back in the office while workers don't want to, because it's very freeing. When you are able to work on your own time remotely from the comfort of your own home, not only does it save you a bunch of time and money on your commute, but it also gives you a lot more freedom to work at a pace that's really your own. And when you can work at a pace that's your own, sometimes you can find that you are able to schedule your day in a way that is actually far more productive and you can get more done in less time. Which means that remote work fundamentally undermines one of the main systems that capitalism has built for itself over the past 100 years, which is wage labor. Wage labor is premised on this idea of basically renting a person, but if people are allowed to be in their own space and on their own time, then we're back to a system where people are paid for their productivity. And so that probably is why there's so much tension right now, where a lot of owners and managers want to force people back into the office because it maintains the system of capitalism more easily for them, whereas the workers want to continue to work from home where we have a lot more freedom. And so really the fact that companies have struggled to force people back in the office and the remote workers are seemingly winning this battle, that really just goes to show how much power workers have right now. And with a little bit of organization, that power could be even greatly increased, and we could see real progressive movements across the country that are fundamentally driven by workers demanding fair treatment.